Okay. I hit record. Okay, it's recording. So, hello everyone. Thank you. I know that it's evening in a lot of people's homes right now. It is 12 noon here, or a little past 12 noon actually, 12:08 in the United States Eastern Time. I'm Trish Heights, and I'm hosting this amazing meeting with Biomastery. I have just completed my foundational training, and I am just kind of blown away by what this program can bring to workplace wellness programs. It really covers everything. It's very comprehensive and very results oriented. And so I wanted to host this in the United States to bring this program to the United States because I find it absolutely incredible. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our speaker, Barbara Parker, who is the head of research and training for Biomastery. Barbara?
Thank you so much, Trish. And thank you, everybody, locally in South Africa, overseas. Um, it's wonderful to see everybody. And without further ado, I know there are people who are going to be still joining us, but I'm going to start sharing just to respect everybody's time. Um, Sorry, Trish, can I ask if you can share so we can all, I can share? Just if you can allow me to share. There we
Should be
go.
good.
Absolutely. Can everybody see my screen? Let's take that away. Right. Okay. With no further ado, can everybody see? Are we happy?
Yes, we can.
Right. That's absolutely wonderful. Folks, I'm going to minimize you. So if anybody wants to raise their hand or make a comment as we're going through, please verbalize because, as I say, as I go through this presentation, I can't really see anybody. So welcome one and all, and thank you very much, Patricia, for hosting this webinar. It really is absolutely wonderful. And to thank everybody, thank you for joining us. I know that there will be people as I'm presenting, more people will be joining us. So thank you up front. As Trish said, I'm Barbara Parker and I'm head of applied research and training at Biomastery for Business. And it's absolutely a privilege to connect with everybody today across all these continents in real time to explore a topic that unites every single one of us today, stress. But today it's no longer enough merely to develop the skills and knowledge to cope with stress. We've moved on from that. The very same skills and knowledge that we learn to manage our stress must also expand our capacity to thrive. With this rising social, economic, and political complexity, global volatility, and acceleration of AI and artificial general intelligence, we as professionals, we simply cannot rely on coping alone. For us, any of us, to be relevant today, we have to be able to thrive and flourish within this accelerating turbulence. We have to remain mentally agile, which I think everybody is fully aware, able to think clearly and adjust quickly when things change. We need to be emotionally regulated, not sort of killing our neighbors, burying bodies. We have to be able to stay steady and balanced under pressure. And we have to be professionally resilient. We need to be able to recover, adapt, and continue performing in the face of challenge. We can't simply collapse and give up. Now, despite being thousands of miles apart, all of us, we are navigating exactly the same pressures, the same uncertainties, and the same need for resilience. The very fact that I am presenting the session to you live from South Africa and that we're having this conversation together reflects just how unified our challenges have become globally. Because the truth simply is this: wherever we are in the world, we are all shaped by the same three drivers of professional stress. The first is the complexity of technology, the pressures that are placed on our time, and finally, our performance requirements. Whatever job we do, it doesn't matter if we are in the C-suite and directors, whether we're switchboard operators, firemen, consultants, coaches, programmers, it really doesn't matter. the pressure on our performance today is accelerated. We're all feeling that we are not coping with our performance. But there was a time that we did. Everything was very kumbaya. And folks, I'm kind of starting for us here in the range of our professional range age group, we'd probably go back into the 90s. Some people can remember sort of it's around about the 90s, the 80s, coming up into the early 2000s. Pressure was there, and even when things became more complex, we were still able to cope. It was manageable. But as we move further into the 21st century, the complexity of technology simply pushed everything into the unsustainable. We were told in the late 90s, as we transitioned into the new millennium, that things were going to exponentially get more hectic, more complex, etc. But nobody has really anticipated the degree of that exponential shift and change in the complexity of technology, which has severely impacted our time, really put us under pressure, and the same in the work environment. This has resulted in us as professionals simply losing our processing capacity. We are every day, each of us are given a finite amount of processing capacity. And what is happening today is we are using up that processing capacity in stress-related issues. Anxiety, fear, anger, depression, hopelessness, helplessness, worry, panic, dread. This is where we're using that energy up, is on that, and a small micro amount on work, even though we feel that we are working flat out. In actual fact, when we quantify the amount of output, we find that we are not. If we, in any shape or form, feeling any of these anxiety-related or stress-related issues, we are using processing capacity, which has been taken away from our capacity to work. So it is a percentage ratio. You can work out how much time do you spend worrying during the course of the day. And it's important to note that this is intergenerational. And I mention this because in the work environment, there is a tendency historically to say, well, the older generation, they're getting stressed, they're getting burnout. We will, in natural fact, replacing with a younger generation from school, from college, from university. They'll come in and sort of replace the stressed older worker. In fact, that's not possible. They are, the younger generation, as stressed, if not more, than the older generation. And this is global. And the big problem with it being global is this interdependency. Today, just for all of us, it doesn't matter where we are in the world, for us to be able to do our banking, use our banking app, it involves hundreds of countries, thousands of companies, and millions of people around the world, just for us to be able to use the banking app. Hardware, software, service providers, etc. Now, the problem with this is that global interdependency has accelerated even further complexity in the technology, including AI, which is in our era now, which has pushed that into sort of a breakdown level for human beings on all levels, different in different industries and organizations, but every single human around the world can feel that they are at breaking point. And as we introduce artificial and general intelligence, which is now looks like it's going to be introduced sooner. We thought we had a couple of decades maybe to wait. That's not true. And artificial general intelligence is to AI what AI is to Google. And that is going to extend for human beings this breakdown sort of state that we're in. We have not, at the moment, the systems, the functions, the way we behave at work are all geared for legacy businesses. It is not geared for the kind of evolving world that we're living in. And most importantly, the impact that it is happening on our organization is destabilizing economies, industries, etc. And most of all, putting us all at threat individually, ourselves as professionals. Now, what is the action? I mean, are we victims? Of course not. We created this complex world that we live in. And yes, we can manage it. The first thing that we have to do is to be able to look after the individual professional. Now, I use this example. If NASA had to send up their astronauts and not train them to deal with anti-gravity, and they bounced around all over the place and they came back a bit worse for wear, we wouldn't say that they're mentally ill. Absolutely not. We would simply say they are untrained. Well, that's exactly the same as us. We're being battered about by a whole lot of new emerging triggers in the world that we live in, and we simply are not trained to function in that space. So we're definitely not mentally ill. We are quite capable, and we've been engineered to be able to take back, if we are trained, our processing capacity and to be able to utilize it far more effectively. Now, we know enough today about neuroscience to be able to train individuals to manage that balance, to be able to manage their stress and to retain the mental balance within their lives. Now, what is really important at this particular point is to understand that capacity is sometimes people feel out of their daily capacity. You know, they come along and they say, Barbara, or they say to one of our coaches or our practitioners, it's all good and well for you to say that. But you know what? Right now, we have to do more. I have to do more with less people in less time to a higher quality. I have to continuously think critically, creatively, intuitively, and come up with accurate decisions in real time. All while the world is constantly and rapidly changing around me. You know what? I feel like I am experiencing exactly the same stress bullets in a war zone as a soldier does. And we're absolutely right. Nobody for 1 minute denies the reality of the situation. The only problem is when we say, I don't have time for anything, especially managing my stress. I mean, how many of us have actually said that? Huh? No time, no time. Uh, the problem is that neurologically doing nothing about stress is not an option. With elevated cortisol in our body, we are on the travelator to mental illness. That is, there is no if, buts, or maybes. That is the way that our body works. Now, what we have to do is we have to neurologically train for the 21st century. This is absolutely possible. We are neurologically engineered to be able to consciously manage our stress and induce states of thriving. But to do that, we have to change our thinking. We have to change from this idea of I don't have anything, especially managing my stress. I can think of half a dozen situations where we can carve out time for you. Your CEO says, I want to see you once a week for 3 hours. You'll make the time. Your geezer bursts, you'll make the time. This happens, you'll make the time. It's about priority. And most of us today, if there is anything that has to give way, it is prioritizing ourselves. And yet we are the vehicle of our own existence. So we have to change this attitude of I don't have time for anything to function optimally. Thriving has to become my priority because we are the conscious agents of getting us onto this side over here. Nothing can be done other than by ourselves to get us into the mental health spectrum in a healthy, manageable way. And it's always good to remember the astronauts and anti-gravity to realize this is a whole new set of environments that we're in and triggers that we have to learn about in the same way the astronauts had to learn about anti-gravity, an area and a condition that they're not accustomed to on Earth. Isn't that incredible? So now that we know that we can actually manage ourselves, it's absolutely possible. We need to understand that the next thing is our teams. We now know enough neurologically to not only train the individual to manage their own stress, but there is the neuroscience of teams as well, which is really super exciting. So a lot of our time in the late 90s and early 2000s was learning the neuroscience, iteratively engineering and testing what works, what doesn't work, to be able to train people to release their executive hormones, their oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine, endorphins, in order to be able to take their performance from their average and accelerate it higher based on their personal resilience. And while we were engineering that, we realized that there is a neuroscience of teams, and it's wonderful. The teams that we train are called tensegrity teams, which is an exciting discovery where we understand now that we, in actual fact, can get the team to also elevate the executive hormones, specifically that of oxytocin, when we develop what is called character-based trust bonds, and trust immediately releases oxytocin, which is the gateway to serotonin, dopamine, and endorphins. And in that, we can lift that personal average higher based on the team resilience. Now, that was an incredible excitement. And timeously, this was brilliant because, in actual fact, to function in the world today of AI, we need to be able to perform at these elevated levels. Now, that speaks to the organization. Organizations are structurally changing rapidly as a result of AI. We can see it around us, but because a lot of what we do is non-observable, it's difficult to put our finger exactly on what is changing. But we need to learn, we need to be given conceptual frameworks of how are organizations changing and why. A good description of why organizations are changing is if we think about companies in the sort of 1990s, the 80s, if we think of them as sailing ships, where the wind and the sea and sort of minimum turbulence was great because a sailing ship used that to get momentum and to go forward. However, if things became too turbulent, if change was too rapid, then the sailing ship was no longer the right vehicle to be able to function in that level of turbulence. And we have to morph into something else. And we are now beginning to look and develop designs for companies that are structured with this emerging AI technology. Now, a lot of us feel overwhelmed by it, but only because there is this, in many respects, fear-mongering, which if anybody was around during the Y2K in the 90s, it was exactly the kind of fear-mongering, and it went over the millennium with a bit of a blip, and then things were back to normal. And we're beginning to see AI settling. And slowly the AI industry is beginning to realize that in order to function, they can't be seen as demigods, etc. They really are there to serve us and to restructure the organizations and to allow us to function optimally in this really complex world that we've created for ourselves today. Now, if somebody had said to me, sort of 7, 10 years ago, that I would be teaching everybody from the C-suite, the CEOs and switchboard operators how to deconstruct companies and understand how they're reconstructed, I would have said, you're joking. And even more so, if somebody had said to me, yeah, well, you're also going to be explaining, and demystifying and deconstructing the global economic ecosystem, I would have said, what? Well, we are. This is because what we need to understand, everybody recognizes the Maslow. We in Biomastery, some people recognize 5 stages of Maslow, others 8, we have 11. Basically what it is, these are our surviving and thriving requirements. These are neurological requirements. This is not at all, kumbaya, it'll be nice. If we don't have these, we succumb to neurological stress. So what we've done today is everything that we use to meet these preconditions to survive and thrive, we've outsourced into this global economic ecosystem, in this massive interdependency. We don't do anything local. I mean, for many of us, COVID gave us sort of an idea of just how much we rely on sourcing from various places around the world, fundamental requirements. But we also realize is it doesn't take much to bring down the deck of cards. Now, for us as professionals, we realize, especially post-COVID, that we can't sit passively and think somebody else is going to look after things. What we need to do as professionals, both for ourselves as professionals, but for our organizations, our divisions, our departments, our teams, we need to be able to understand exactly what is the situation, what have we outsourced, with what level of risk. Just a couple of months ago, we had the example with Microsoft, where one patch, one programmer inappropriately placed, and Microsoft was brought to its knees along with the world with it. Anybody who was using the operating system didn't function for a substantial amount of time. So that vulnerability is there. And unpacking it is not complicated, and finding an alternative way to offset risk is not complicated. Right. So the question, folks, is finally our organizations. This is where it all has to come together, because our organizations are the vehicles by which our wealth is accumulated, how we are able to meet our thriving and surviving requirements through salaries and wages, etc. However, as we've been speaking, what you're beginning to understand is that the intra-organization functionality is important, but equally the inter-organization with these interrelated connections between our service providers, our clients, and this global network. If anything happens to our organizations and it goes pear-shaped, it has a ripple effect, and we might knock only over one pin in 2 or 3 companies, but the ripple effect from that is knocking over 10 pins in somebody else, and finally we can knock over more. So as we begin to realize the accountability and responsibility of stabilizing the cohesion and functioning with cohesion in this global economic ecosystem, as we begin to realize more and more how important it is, it begins to reflect back on the way that we make decisions and how we function within our companies and within ourselves, because now it's not just, well, I just want to feel better. It's a lot more than that is at stake. Now, what is important to realize is that transforming an individual from not coping with stress to managing it effectively is neither quick nor superficial. It requires sort of this multi-layered developmental process that integrates our behavioral, our emotional, and our cognitive conceptual training. It is really important to understand that with repeated interventions that fail to produce lasting improvements, and I just want to segue a little bit here, is that remember, we are all trying, since the 90s, we've been all trying to sort of find ways to manage stress. But sometimes we are not sure if it works. There is no follow-up to understand. We're implementing all these little things, and if we get it wrong, it creates frustration, fatigue, and resistance to further developmental efforts. And this is a widespread challenge today. When we implement programs within our organization, we've got to make sure that these implementations are working. How do they fit together? How sustainable are they? What are they doing to engage our professionals? What is the goal of the intervention and the training? We have to be far more scientific in the approach that we take today. Now, from our point of view, the Biomastery program has evolved over more than 2 decades now. And it was shaped through the practical experiences in South Africa's complex and fast-changing environment. It's important to understand that South Africa in the 90s, the social and economic and political change that we were going through really had the potential to destabilize us, and the government and business leaders had to ensure the mental and emotional stability of professional citizens across all sectors of the South African economy to prevent the country from sliding into recession as a result of low performance, low productivity, and low profitability. And it's testimony to that resilience of leaders and the South Africans themselves that they were able to stabilize the economy, to be able to allow it to function effectively, be resilient against all kinds of odds and pressures. And today we stand quite capable of being partners in the interdependent global economic ecosystems, as we can see it played out in real time today. But we have a pedigree of managing stress. One thing we've realized, though, is that spontaneous resilience is no longer enough. It is a science to be resilient today, given the complexity of the world that we live in. So it was built by professionals for professionals. And the unique thing about this fact is that it's an open-ended curriculum. So it's continually evolving through the contributions of its trainees and alumni. as the world changes. And this is in order to remain current and relevant in real time. And it's super interesting, when people start attending, that they know when they come to the end of their curriculum that now the curriculum is being extended the next year, and they are going to then catch up in workshops, etc., or redo the curriculum in the 2 or 3 years later. Today, it is geo-neutral and applicable across all countries because obviously over the last 2 decades and a bit, we've been implementing in sort of multinationals. Our professionals also have worked globally all around the world. It's industry neutral and relevant at every organizational level, from frontline workers to senior leadership. Now, the reason we mention this is really important because it's one script. Everybody gets the same foundational knowledge and information and skill set. So it doesn't matter who they talk to within the organization. Nobody gets anything different. Everybody has got exactly the same script when it pertains to the individual, the team, the organization, and the economic ecosystem. Importantly, it is designed in a straightforward, accessible language, primarily graphic like this, suitable for professionals at all levels, from new recruits to senior officers and executives. And again, this is important because in South Africa, we have a huge diversity, local and international, people within the country. And we need to be able to ensure that within one organization, we can present to all this diversity and not have to specialize. So really, over the years, the key thing was about iteratively engineering this sort of neutral approach that everybody could be able to access it. There was nothing that was going to be too prohibitive that you would have to have any kind of a specialized knowledge to do the course. Now, again, what is important is it's credited for CPD points, continued professional development points for the Health Professions Council of South Africa. It's accredited through the South African Academy of Family Physicians, 20 clinical and 30 and 10 ethics, so it's 30 in total. Now, this means that we train the doctors, the psychiatrists, psychologists, etc. So we train them, we use the biomastery model to train them, which is really important to understand that doctors have been trained that pharmaceuticals are not the only option now where people present with anxiety, that there are alternatives. They themselves are going through the training and they're becoming more aware that training is the option, not medication. We are not ill. We're not mentally ill. We are just untrained. And that's super important. Now, the training focuses on 6 key areas, and these are the key areas that professionals have whittled down and said, these are the most important areas that need to be developed. So first of all, obviously, it's practical real-time stress regulation skills. We have to be equipped with the neuroscience-based tools to enable us to regulate our physiological and emotional response in real time. So as we are triggered now, we need to be able to respond in real time. So we need to regulate our nervous system before reacting. So as we get triggered in meetings or by a colleague, it must be as seamless. We feel it, we absorb it, we are able to calm it down immediately. So we need to recover from stress in the moment, not hours or days or weeks later. It has to be in the moment. We need to be able to interrupt that spiral of anxiety, frustration, or emotional flooding. We have to be able to keep our thinking brain switched on. We need to keep our emotional systems calm, balanced, and stable. We need to be able to maintain clarity, composure, and control. Now, this is not optional for the professional in the 21st century. Things are happening too fast for us not to be present in real time with mastery over our processing capacity, being able to pull it back, decompress ourselves, and have access to 100% of that processing capacity that we're giving. So we have to change that from being allocated to stress to be able to utilize it in a way that we feel that is appropriate in our lives, to be able to manage that stress and retain that balance. It has to be sustainable across all situations. So we have to teach, we have to be taught how stress actually works in the brain, our body, and our emotional system. We need to know, it's no good that people give us fish. We need to be taught how to fish and how to reset our responses irrespective of the circumstances. So this produces long-term resilience in a world where pressure is continuous, cumulative, and unavoidable. So it's really important that irrespective of the situation, we are able to adapt our response strategies in unique situations to retain our mental and emotional stability across diverse situations. So it really doesn't matter where those stress bullets come from, under what circumstances, where, how, unfamiliar, familiar, doesn't really matter. We are able in the moment to adjust our strategies to accommodate them. And obviously, now strengthening teamwork, communication, and trust is absolutely critical. We need to be able to be trained for intra-team emotional intelligence, allowing us to function as coherent units rather than stressed individuals working in isolation. Now, at this particular point, just refer back to original teams where output was the primary concern. So a team cohesion wasn't there, it was just output. So if a team member couldn't function, they were taken out of the equation. Because output was everything. The problem is as stress became more triggering and everybody in the team was becoming stressed, there was no team to create the output. So now this is when we talk about the tensegrity team, where cohesion is the most important thing. So as the stress bullets come, we're not only relying on our own capacity, but we are using the team to also manage our stress, but induce states of thriving, which is so exciting. So it helps us understand our own stress triggers, obviously, but also to recognize stress behaviors in colleagues, reduce preventable interpersonal conflict, build trust, cohesion, stable communication. So that processing capacity, even with the team, we need to be able to make sure that irrespective of what those stress bullets are, we are able to hold our team together. Our own personal balance and our team balance is absolutely critical. Now, something that we discovered, which in retrospect, it's sort of really evident, but especially just pre-COVID, but during COVID, is suddenly there was this eureka moment when we realized, hang on, we're not separate. We're not a professional and a personal individual. We are one thing. If we stressed at work, we're stressed at home. If we're okay at work, we're okay at home. So it's really important we began to realize that as professionals, we don't just manifest this capacity to manage our stress and build our resilience only at work. We need to be able to extend that outside into our community and especially into our homes. So stress doesn't stay at work only. Without effective regulations, we can carry this emotional weight of our jobs into our homes and communities. Now, it's really important that the training stabilizes after difficult emotional intense situations, whether we're at work or at home. To prevent the stress spillover into family and personal relationships, for us to be able to strengthen the connection and communications at home and maintain calmer, more constructive interactions in our communities. Now, many of us worldwide at the moment are beginning to realize how critically important this component is. Has exploded. And in fact, many of our coaches are discovering on their one-on-one actual classic coaching, besides their training, their interactions with individuals is managing this as the pressure cooker builds up. It is exploding and snap and cracking in the home environment. So it's not only about us being able to perform in the workplace, but globally as humans. So again, it doesn't matter where those stress bullets come or why, the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, the power failure that happened, the wheel that broke, the pipe that burst, it really doesn't matter. We need to be able to practice the same level of stress management in the home environment. Even if the kids are crying and saying, wants our attention and we feel that we just want to run away, we just have no more capacity or energy, we begin to learn how to be able to manage our lifestyle more effectively, to not begin to feel that we just want to hide away in a cupboard. Isn't this incredible? Now, obviously, situational awareness in our diverse evolving society, again, something that is so relevant today. The training must strengthen a professional's ability to understand and respond effectively within complex, multiracial, and rapidly shifting social environments. And this is where South Africans' strength is. Right from the 90s, there was an emphasis on being able to transcend the identity of individuals, race, religion, sexual orientation, it really didn't matter. When we are working in diverse environments and we have to be able to trust each other and work within cohesion, we have to transcend all those elements to be able to be productive for our departments, our divisions, our companies to be productive. We have to be able to work in this transcendent, trusting environment. So there needs to be social and cultural awareness, understanding the behaviors, stress patterns, and emotional responses of people from diverse backgrounds. Insight into local and community dynamics is critical, recognizing the pressures, the histories, and the expectations that shape public behavior. Emotional maturity and behavioral stability, remaining calm, respectful, and proportionate in volatile encounters. And then awareness of national and global forces. This is absolutely critical. Understanding how economic stress, social media, political tension, misinformation, and global instability affect public sentiment and emotional climate. Now, this is escalating today. All of us are experiencing it through social media. We can see into the homes of people who live in other countries, in other cities, in other work environments, real time, connecting with people, feeling like they're right next door, and realizing that there is this community of experience that we are all going through. The result is when we begin to understand situational awareness and diversity, we are able to have better judgments when we interact with people who are not raised with the same collective reality as we have, improve public engagement, strengthens community trust, reduces escalation, and enhances personal and professional integrity. So again, our processing capacity has to remain stable, because why? When we look again at this sort of interconnected interreliance that we have and the need for cohesion, is because we have outsourced our needs, our personal needs, our families' needs, our communities' needs, our companies' needs, our countries' needs. We have dispersed this across the global community, and we need to be able to remain stable in the cohesion that is required to ensure that this interrelated community is not prodded into any form of collapse. So ultimately, the sixth, the most important for us as professionals, improve decision-making, operational outcomes. When we regulate our stress in real time, we regain the ability to think clearly, evaluate situations accurately, and respond proportionately. Today, popular understanding of the neuroscience is that when we have elevated cortisol, our prefrontal cortex over here, our clever center, our intelligence center is shut down. It's not triggered. We lose all access to our higher order functioning, our ability to plan for an unseen future, being creative, innovative. All of that is lost to us. When we are able to manage that stress, reduce the cortisol in our body, induce states of thriving, we elevate our capacity to use our executive hormones and stimulate our executive functions. This results to improvements in judgment and proportional decision-making, perception and situational awareness, communication during conflict, impulse control, stability in fast-moving or emotionally charged environments, which is exactly what technology is pushing us into. On a daily basis, there are changes and upgrades and ripple effects across the technological landscape that directly impacts the way that we engage and do our workflows on a daily basis. Now, the skills that I've just spoken about here are non-negotiable requirements of all professionals of the 21st century. We're functionally not employable if we can't maintain it. The transformation of an individual, and I'm repeating myself here, from not coping with stress to managing it effectively is neither quick nor superficial. We are working with the human brain, roughly 500 million years in the making. That's what we're up against. What we call avatars, our prefrontal cortex, our amygdala, hippocampus, all of these neural structures that we engage with, that we're trained to engage with, these are not going to just give lightly over to us and say, yeah, go for it. We've been running you and keeping you alive for your entire life, but you go for it. You go take it over. Not a chance, not a chance. It is a journey of iterative training to get you to the point where they comfortably trust us enough to begin to hand over certain key responsibilities and begin to give us greater levels of processing capacity, because that is enormous energy that they're handing over, bodily energy. And remember, they're built for conserving of energy. So to just give it over to us lightly, unless they trust us. Isn't that exciting? Isn't that absolutely wonderful? Okay, so Biomastery for sure is not a short course, definitely not. It is a comprehensive 40-week developmental journey that includes 1.5 hours per week of instructor-led group tutorials, approximately 3 hours per week of self-managed training material. And at the conclusion of the training, participants join the Biomastery alumni community, a shared environment of collaboration and ongoing development to ensure real-time relevance in the rapid and relentlessly changing world. It is super exciting. And what we're finding is that Biomastery is less about some sort of training program, of which it is, but it is 40 weeks of a lifetime journey, which we work with together. So it's a life-changing program, and it's designed to be, it is the start of this lifetime journey. The mandate that we all have as custodians of this training program, which everybody adds to and builds and develops. The mandate is to provide the foundational skills and knowledge that enable professionals to function sustainably and optimally in the turbulence of the 21st century. And the commitment from all of us is no compromise on excellence and no person left behind. Because today it is so easy to compromise on excellence, to go for a quick, short, easy, cheap course, where we know that is not going to create the transformation that is necessary from not coping to coping, from not having any resilience to resilience. We are complicated creatures, and we cannot compromise on the excellence of the journey, and no person can be left behind. We can't say, that person, no, they're just a boiler maker, or they're just a bus driver, or the fireman. Where do we stop? Whatever we do has to incorporate the whole of the professional community of humanity for us to grow and develop in this cohesive way. So the goal is personal and professional stability, because by extension, that is going to create social, political, and economic stability in a highly complex, interdependent global ecosystem. Yeah, isn't this amazing? So I'd like to conclude before I hand over for questions is Draker's comment: the greatest danger in times of turbulence is not the turbulence. It is to act with yesterday's logic, which obviously has the consequences that we have discussed. So on that cliffhanger, I hope you've all enjoyed. I've stayed within the time frame of this webinar. What I'd like to do is put it to everybody now. I'm going to stop sharing and ask if anybody has any questions for us to answer or to take away and contact you later to be able to chat about it. Guys, welcome. I see that there's a lot more people now as we started. Welcome, everybody. Does anybody, I hope, yes, I did. I stayed within the time constraints here. Does anybody have any questions or comments that they'd like to put to the table? Just to let everybody know, we are recording this, and we would love to be able to cut this up and break it up and utilize your comments to be able to go online. So we'll be loading this onto YouTube, and your comments will be picked out if you allow us to be able to highlight certain points. If I may, put it to the floor. Have I caused everybody to freeze up?
So
Yes.
I would just, my thought was when you were talking about this is how this fits into an organizational's plan for strategizing, your line about no compromise for excellence. And I think every company would like to believe that they practice that too. However, if their staff is not where they need to be, they may not even know that they're not delivering on the excellence. So my question is, when you work with a company, do you recommend that all the employees go through the 40-week program or just the leaders?
No, everybody.
Everybody.
Companies, Yeah, a company is not run by the leaders alone. The company is run by
Correct.
everybody. And you can't have a leader who is super advanced in understanding and then the staff doesn't follow on. So everybody has to be on board. It has to be a cultural shift in the organization where everybody takes accountability for their stress and resilience. Everybody understands the neuroscience of it. And it's one playbook that the entire organization is working from. So it depends on the type of the organization, where they want to start. Some might start with the operational teams because it's more important in terms of the deliverables of the organization. But then very quickly, the leaders have to go on the program as well. Some do it as a linear rollout, one after the others. Others do it everybody simultaneously. Depending on what the company's capacity is, you can see that it's low pressure, high intensity integration into the self, but it's 1.5 hours a week with 3 hours of learning. So it's about 4.5 hours a week. So it's not highly pressured, but it has great effect. So it's not a question of they've been taken out of the work environment. They are still operational, they're still able to work. So it doesn't matter what the size of the organization is, it's within each organization's capacity to utilize it. And not only that, it excites them because 40 weeks is over very quickly. Now they can bring in meaningful additional uh, interventions that are specific and more bespoke for departments, divisions, leaders, etc. But now it's being done from a foundational understanding of what they're doing, not just flinging mud in it'll hope and hoping it'll stick.
Yes. So it's a complete commitment to that excellence in delivery and productivity. It's not just, oh, we need to train our employees. It's a company-wide commitment.
And it's driven by their bottom line.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
performance drives productivity, drives profitability. So this is not a sort of, oh, let's make all our staff happy. This is,
Hmm.
let's increase our bottom line. So the
Yes.
decision starts with, if we want to increase our bottom line, we've got to increase productivity. To increase productivity, we have to increase performance. To increase performance, we have to make sure that our staff are functioning optimally.
Yes. Absolutely.
Wonderful. That's a great,
Barbara,
yes.
you know, people are sort of a bit skeptical about neuroscience, okay? So, how would you explain neuroscience to, obviously, you have to go to the head of the company, and how would you explain that to them?
A fantastic question. Elson, yeah, no, that is a super question. In actual fact, neuroscience is not that complicated. So the first thing we do is we show them a brain. Then we show them the various structures of the brain. We show them what they do, the functions, and we give them avatars. So something like the amygdala is the full function is the security center. Hippocampus is the librarian. So we have all these little functions. We take them away from the brain. We give them an avatar to represent them. And then we deal with those avatars. So very quickly, the executives are able to understand in very practical terms, not only the executives, I mean, it's very easy for everybody to understand how our brains work. We don't deal with the entire brain. We deal with the most important departments that are relevant to stress and resilience. As you progress and you become more sophisticated, we drill down into those departments and we become more nuanced in the various players and supports and assistants in the departments. But overall, it is not complicated to understand. Then the neuroscience is to understand that in natural fact, we are engineered to collaborate. And the training is to show how we collaborate. There are various tricks that we can work with. Let me just show you all. What I want you to do is I want you to just turn your foot in a clockwise direction, your right foot, just so comfortably and turn it in a clockwise direction. Once you've got that going, take your right hand and do the number 6 in the air. Okay, you see it's not possible? Okay, just showing you the connection. Exactly, there we go. We've just looked at a neurological hack. Yeah, it's interesting. You're going to practice that for a while now. There was a neurological hack. So what we do is we go through a lot of lightweight hacks at the beginning to assist in the immediacy of the situation. You know, most of us today know and understand that breathing is a hack, but and explain the neuroscience. Why does breathing work? What is actually happening that empowers you? Now, once you understand the science behind the breathing, you can decide what type of breathing works for you in what kind of a situation. Boom, breathing. Then we take you on to the next one, relaxation. And slowly we build up the repertoire of functional activities and skills that you can have that allow you to begin to co-collaborate with your, I don't want to say brain, let's say our avatars, these neurological structures, and you begin to realize, wow, if I do this, they've got no choice but to listen to me. When I calm my breathing down, they have no choice but to activate my prefrontal cortex. There is just in the same way you can't do the number 6 when you're doing your foot clockwise, your avatars can't do anything about the fact that they can't keep your prefrontal cortex shut down with elevated cortisol if you calm your breathing. So these are interesting things that as they go into training, when we start developing, it's a very easy language that we use to be able to explain. So the age group, the youngest we've gone to is about 18, all the way up. There's no upper limits to our age groups, and it's across the entire organization. And we have deconstructed a lot of it into sort of primary school, secondary school, etc. We've done smatterings of trainings in those areas to ensure that our training is accessible to everybody. We've also done the cross-cultural studies, etc. If you are asking me, how do we convince in 45 minutes? That's where you were going. Okay, so you're saying, how do we convince the C-suite in 45 minutes that this is important? Well, then we do a presentation similar to this, except it speaks to the needs of the C-suite. So when we do our presentations, we make them specific. So for example, Trish wants to put together a presentation specifically to the wellness or spa industry in America. So we will adjust this slightly for the SPA group. We are going to be doing another presentation for the South African police. They have unique stresses and strains. We have a unique presentation for the health industry. We have some health practitioners now, several doctors, etc., that are attending. And for the C-suite, we have the same thing. So what you would do, Elsa, is that you would set up the meeting and we would come in, and in 45 minutes, we would do a presentation that's easy to understand. We've got the skill set to do that, which allows them and empowers them to make the kind of decisions that have to be made, but because it becomes self-evident. They go, it's just that there isn't the narrative and the language out there at the moment. As you can see, I mean, the way that I've taken you through the 45 minutes is quite novel. You are
unbelievably fantastic, I must say. Yeah, but it's still I'd love to see how you do it, because so many people go. I often say, wonder, okay, I'm an NLP practitioner. Should I say that? Or am I simply a life coach, etc., etc., etc.? Because people do shy away from that. But if you explain it simplistically, and exactly what you did brilliantly was give an example.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And I think, Elsa, which is what you've asked is so, so important, because we have created an incredibly complex society. Can I call it the collective reality, our shared reality? Mm-hmm. So what happens is we now spend most of our lives just learning how to cope in the collective reality. And that comes at the expense of our personal reality. So in our personal reality, we no longer have a narrative, a language to express and explain these elements that are fundamental to how human beings function. And what we're doing is we're putting it back, because it's not complicated. It's not difficult to understand, but you're absolutely right that people are getting a terminology fatigue. So that's what I was saying, where people come with these little quick, cheap interventions. And it's not that anybody is going in with nefarious, bad intentions. It's just a lot of people don't realize the level of complexity. So they go in there and sort of say, yes, I'll sort you out in a weekend or, a couple of hours. And a lot of these programs really do have a powerful impact, but short term, not sustainable. And what happens is people begin to back off. And also, talking neuroscience can be quite complicated. Um, yeah, so we've spent many, 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 many years uh, developing a methodology of being able to talk neuroscience in really good, easy terms. And you'll have people turning around and saying, I'm going to speak to your security center today. It becomes a familiar conversation. And yeah, it's super, super exciting. So I hope that's answered your question or your commentary.
Yes, thanks very much. I do want to ask you one thing.
Hmm.
I'm not sure. I use Avatar in a different way. Can you explain to me what your avatars are? Because you know what's happening now, that avatars are actually your ideal customers in techno speech, but you've got a different thing about avatar. So what is an avatar?
Okay, so the general use of the word avatar is just to represent a function or something. So avatars take the place of the real thing. That's really what we're looking at, what avatar means. So what we do is there's a neurological part of your brain called the amygdala. And the function of the amygdala is to be able to monitor the risk of everything that's coming in through your senses. It's coming, and the security center decides whether or not that is a risk. Very simplistic explanation now, because this little company doesn't, our neurological company doesn't work with only one thing, but imagine it as a security center at the beginning of a company. And so I can legitimately call that amygdala the security center. You on mute?
Okay.
See,
So,
isn't that exciting? Isn't that exciting? As soon as you understand the function, you can then look for an avatar to represent that function.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Barbara,
Thank you.
I just wanted to remind us all about the time.
Thank you so much.
And if we want to finish up the recording, and we can discuss more after if that feels like a good strategy to you.
Fantastic. If I can just ask, Yogini, it's wonderful to see you. If I can ask if anybody can ask questions that we can use for the recording, it'll be absolutely wonderful. Any commentary, like Yogini, if you just like to make your comment, and maybe Nancy and Wendy, if each of you could maybe just give some feedback. And Damien, it's super to see you from Sunlam. Rachel, so if everybody, maybe if you wouldn't mind, then we can cut and paste those and use that if you guys are okay with it. Craig, can I start with you, Yogini? Would you like to give us a quick summary and then we can bring everything to a close?
Okay, great. I just want to first say thank you, Barbara. You've been amazing, and you've been like an angel from heaven. When I started this course 1 year ago, I didn't even know I was stressed. I was suppressing a lot, and I just came personally through a lot of hardship and understanding, because I'm also a spiritual leader as well. So understanding from a spiritual point of view and a neuroscience point of view how the body functions and how we can control those fears, anxiety, and so forth, really helped me. I can finally say I found my peace. I can manage those little waves of fear and all of that. So it's really improving every day. I mean, the practices that you send out every day as well, those 10-minute meditations are really, really helpful. And you can actually feel that you're on the other side supporting and guiding us. So I just want to thank you so for everything.
Thank you so much, Rogani.
Okay.
That really, that's such kind words. Hugely appreciated. And great testimonials. So thank you. That's great.
Awesome.
Thank you. Does anybody else? Craig, would you like to?
Yeah, let me fire away. Yeah. So first of all, Trish and Barbara, Bob, shall I say, excellent presentation. So yes, so I've been with Bob's for a while now as well. I've completed my foundation training. And what I'd say is if I could have had this when I was in the United Kingdom, so I had a lot of pressure. I had a lot of responsibility, and basically at the end of the day, I ended up getting lupus, and I lost a lot. So my whole life collapsed. So that was after 18 and a half years in the UK and having major success. So had I known what I know now, and had I been through the training prior to when I was in the UK, my control of stress, thriving, being more resilient, it would have been a game changer. So yeah, to Bob's, I thank you very much because this has changed my life. There's a lot of things happening at the moment in my life too, personally, and having to run my company and do this and do that. It's helped me a heck of a lot. Because if I hadn't had this training, I dread to think of where I'd be at the moment. So yeah, to Barbara, testimony, absolutely fantastic. I highly recommend Biomastery. Obviously, we've got a long-term plan as well, medium and long-term plan. I'm with you all the way, Bobs. I'd like to break into the UK market space. So yeah, I'd just like to say, Bobs, amazing your training and everything about it. And the people I've met through Biomastery, absolutely fantastic. So fantastic presentation today.
And Craig, thank you so much because you represent the young leaders of today. You've carried
Mm.
immense stress and responsibility on your shoulders, and you sort of at that executive level, what you're realizing is how
Yeah,
critical it functions, especially at that executive and
totally.
senior management level. So again, wonderful testimonial, Craig. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. And the fact that you see this playing out
Yeah.
in the UK is so critical. So thank you.
Oh, huge. I mean, I do want to say see a huge opportunity. I mean, when you talk about stress management, you talk about health and wellness, and mental health. It's huge in the UK, huge, and there's a huge opportunity. So yeah, no, I'm totally bowled over. I mean, it's changed my life. So thank you, Bobs.
Thanks so much. Thank you so much. Right. Who else would like to have Rachel Lee? Can I ask if thank you so much. Would you like to be able to say? I'm not too sure if anybody else is going to be able to want to say anything. I'm just having a little look here. Yetta, anything from you? Angela? Irina? Thumbs up. Everybody happy? Okay. Yes, Trish?
I would just like to say I think that I've been in the health and wellness coaching space for a while, and this just gives me a more complete training to be able to present to people. My industry has always been the spa industry, and I've seen it for many, many, many years, is that the staff is the product. They deliver the service. And if the service is not committed to excellence, which it can't possibly be when a human is stressed to be able to produce a certain amount of revenue in the day, see a certain amount of clients in the day, sell a certain amount of retail in the day, it completely dilutes the delivery of the service. Not to say that those things are not important, but be able to train the staff to be able to be resilient around everything that has to be accomplished is a concept that I don't think the spa world has ever really thought about. And as a spa, one of the roles in my career has been a spa director, and I directly saw it. And I saw how it affected the culture, which affects the energy, which affects the attitude, which affects the bottom line. So I just think that this is so not just necessary, but mandatory for any businesses that think they're delivering wellness to the consumer. The staff there's a disconnect between how the staff lives in their non-wellness atmosphere and how they're supposed to deliver wellness to the client.
Wow. That's very powerful. Trish, that's absolutely
Really
wonderful.
interesting.
Yes. Absolutely superb. Gosh, thank you so much. And I think that is if what a wonderful note to end on. Um, I think that next time I go to the spa, I'm going to give the person a hug and say, are you de-stressed? Give them a hug
By the way,
before I.
there's a lot of power in a hug. So you joke,
Ah,
but yeah, I
there
think you need to do
certainly
that.
is. There certainly is. So
Yeah.
I will stop the recording now. Is everyone?
I can
Thank
just
you
comment,
all.
sorry,
Oh,
if I
go
can
ahead.
just build up, Trish, sorry, and I know I said that lightheartedly, but sorry, just to say, what is really important when we're talking about the wellness industry is that more and more spas are playing a definitive role in the wellness industry.
Hmm.
It is expanding beyond simple self-indulgence and feeling good
Hmm.
about yourself, and really beginning to take on that function of trying to sort of mentally tox or decompress in these environments of wellness. So what you're saying is so critical, and pushing them into the next level of science of understanding what they're actually doing is so terribly important. So super on that, Trish.
Yes, and just to tag on to that, many years ago when I started studying mind-body wellness, after being diagnosed with kidney cancer, I wanted to bring this thought process into the spa world, but that was 20 years ago, and people were not ready for that. And I think that, as you just said, so many more spas are transforming their brand into spa and wellness center because they recognize that the average person, everyone is so stressed and they don't know where to go to relieve that and to find some solutions to that. And so the first place that the average consumer is thinking about is, let me go to the spa. But as we know, that's a temporary fix for them. And true about what you said, if the staff actually understand the process of how resilience happens and how true wellness can be taken home with the consumer, not just when they are at the spa and they feel, better, for a couple hours until they go home and then, they live their lives again, but to teach the guest that comes to the spa how to take that wellness home and incorporate it into their life. That's what the spas, I think that they would like to be able to do, but I don't think that they have discovered how that happens. They just want to deliver a great wellness service, but how does that affect the guest when they walk out the door? That's the added piece that could be a much bigger piece of what they offer.
I love that. And then also just, if I could just on closing talk to Elsa, where um, Elsa, in actual fact, comes from the entertainment industry and has been in there for years, and is bringing an incredibly important capacity to professionals in the boardroom is how do you present? How do you articulate yourself? How, we are the vehicles now of change. And to get that, to get people to feel empowered, once they can manage stress and their stress and build their resilience, for somebody like Elsa to come in and teach them to expand that as speakers, as panel members, to communicate themselves effectively. It's so much easier. But if you start with somebody who's imploding and embarrassed and stressed and afraid of themselves, it's almost like a non-starter. So, Elsa, I think it's going to be an exciting journey. I think that your area that you are breaking into in the business world is super, super exciting because you're adding that additional element to professionals to extend that flourishing, that part of thriving and flourishing, is part of what you're going to be taking them into. So there you've already transcended the stress element. You're saying, right, once you've managed your stress, let's move on and let's flourish with these additional skills. So yes, well done on that as well. I think that's super exciting. Great. Guys, anything else? Or as Trish says, should we call it? Thank you so much. That's wonderful. Um, we've gone slightly over time, but everybody, thank you for the comments and being present. If I can hand it back to Trish as the host.
I would just like to say thank you for all of you for taking the time out to attend today. I know that everyone's schedule is always busy, but Barbara and I really appreciate you taking the time to come to and add your thoughts and comments and learn more about this. So thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.